Hi everyone, this is Professor Walker, and today we're talking about developmental disabilities in the social work profession. So this is chapter 12 in the book currently, and this is a very important chapter in which all social workers should be aware of. So the learning outcomes today are describe the history of services to people with disabilities, identify and discuss major types of developmental disabilities, describe contemporary social work practice with people who have disabilities. Advocacy is a key part to this. Explain social justice issues that pertain to human diversity involving disabilities. And discuss the disability rights movement and its causes. So our case study is Mary and Leah Perkins, and what I would like you to do is to um, identify what deficits do these clients have within the biophysical dimensions, psychological dimensions, and the social dimensions, utilizing the social work multidimensional framework tool. This will be very vital to you in your future practice as a social worker to get familiar with this initial assessment of the multidimensional framework. So professional competencies, the key here is to use knowledge of human behavior across our life's course. And we can do this by utilization of the multidimensional framework, which is vital in understanding human behavior in the social environment. So as our environment changes, so does individuals' thoughts, thinking, and biochemistry, or biophysical aspects of them. Remember, the other thing is to collaborate to advocate for effective policies. That's on a more macro level of social work. It can also be meso. And then remember our plan change process. So there will be engagement, assessment, intervention, and evaluation of the client, which is all vital to helping them get the resources that they need so that we can have this population obtain social justice and economic justice. So there were some pioneering efforts or our history related to, how individuals in ancient times were treated with disabilities. So in the Sparta era, individuals with disabilities were viewed as outcasts, right? And they were left to die. Native Americans valued people with disabilities, and they let them live unharmed as children of the Great Spirit. In the 1300s, a colony of persons with intellectual disabilities was established in Belgium. So individuals with disabilities around this time were viewed as outcasts. And then you have also the King of England, who distinguished between the different types of intellectual disabilities. This goes on to talk about the Elizabethan Poor Laws, where relief was provided, like food and shelter for people with disabilities, along with the elderly and people with mental illness and the sickness. So we're starting to see help from society. And then, of course, France pioneered the first educated persons with disabilities. So there's these various histories and movements. One thing we need to be aware of is eugenic movements, which took strong hold in both the United States and Europe in the late 19th century and the early 20th century. And many people today still hold this view. And this was the manifestation, was Hitler's final solution in the 1930s and 40s. So please refer to your book about this movement because it's very important to be aware of this because these thoughts and thinkings about people with individuals with disabilities are still active today. And then there's also social Darwinism. Please refer to your book in that. But basically, it says that only the strong survive or the fittest will survive. So people with disabilities may not be within that category. So then, of course, there was a changing attitude. So in the early 1900s, research showed positive outcomes for people with disabilities. There was also deinstitutionalization and employment services, and supports were offered to people with disabilities. Independent living was facilitated, and attitudes started to change as research started to become available, but mostly because of the passage of time and the gradual dying down of the eugenics movement. Normalization and the deinstitutionalization movement was really big. Um, Normalization was the concept that first developed in the Scandinavian countries in the 1950s. So, like those Norwegian countries, that valued still people who were living or had a disability. And deinstitutionalization as the goal. So please refer to your book related to that and be aware of the Developmental Disabilities Act of 1969, which called for establishing councils and advocacy agencies in every state. Very, very important. So please review that in your books as well. in the textbook as well. So formally defined, a disability is anything that occurs before the affected individuals has reached the age of 22 is the federal definition. And a disability can be chronic and severe in function, and it can also limits independent living and ability to self-support. So that's that biopsychosocial still showing itself here, right? The chronic disease, more severe in nature, and then the limited independent living and ability to self-sustain. So major types of disabilities, those are identified here. I would suggest you go through these with your book as well. And this is the second chapter. Remember, disabilities can be biologically based or psychosocial based. Excuse me. This talks about, some of the disabilities originate during pregnancy of the mothers. Others occur during birth or during the child's developmental period. So again, these disabilities can have biological, psychological, or social origins. So we need to definitely be aware of those things. Then we talk about the continuum of care that you can refer to your book. We talked about this previously, and so this should be a familiar concept, but please review this related to this chapter and this at-risk population. Social work practice with peoples with disabilities. So the NASW Code of Ethics is very important. Remember, all clients have value and worth and should be dignified and treated as such. And of course, the institutional settings can be medical or communal settings, so outpatient clinics, inpatient clinics, hospitals, long-term care facilities. Those are all things in which we can find social workers working with members in this population. Of course, supported employment is very important. We're starting to see social workers more in genetic counseling and also helping with the spirituality dimensions related to this, related to individuals who may have disabilities or children with disabilities or families too, who have children with disabilities, forgive me. So human diversity and social justice is very important. So remember, persons with disabilities can be viewed as members of diverse populations, in particular as members of diverse populations that are very vulnerable to discrimination by the wider society, and also very vulnerable to biophysical harm and psychological harm. And so social justice issues and disabilities are very important. So we should always be advocating for our clients, working particularly in this setting as well with individuals who are living with disabilities. Um, and we should be able to identify a mismatch between the person and the environment, right? So is their disability biophysical based, meaning that they're limited from a physical standpoint? Is the environment reflective of that? And also psychosocial, is the environment that they're in one that's harboring positive emotions and positive behaviors? And so if not, we need to work with our clients to probably develop more sustained environments. Remember, this population is very at risk for discrimination, and we should always be empowering, also respecting client self-determination, and then also teaching or helping to self-advocate at whatever level they can. So the disability rights movement and social policy and appropriate terminology. So the key here is the 1975 Education for All Handicapped Children. Please refer to your text because you will definitely need to be aware of that. And then the 1990s Americans with Disabilities Act and the 1991 Civil Rights Act. You need to please refer to your text for this. These are very important acts, and you may see these again on future tests. We keep going here. So these are just global efforts on behalf, so with the United Nations and the treaties to help these individuals. Values, dilemmas, and ethical implications. So social workers should always be aware support for caregivers is vital so that we don't have caregiver burnout, and that we have supports in place to help our clients too and their families. Again, the Americans with Disability Act of the 1990 and the Civil Rights Act of 1991 are great examples of legislation aimed at improving social conditions and promoting social justice for people with disabilities. So current trends, we are always coming from an empowerment or strength-based model. So families are viewed as competent, full partners in professional practice. So we help them and we empower our clients, we empower our families to help each other. We also provide services for caregiver support, wraparound services that could be biopsychosocial, so like home health services, case management service, food services, housing services, psychological services, those type of things. And then remember, with the increasing lifespan of people with disabilities, made possible by advances in medicine, so biophysical, right? So they may also need access to certain medications to ensure also they have insurance and other entitlements. And we should be reducing homelessness as well in this population. And the number of people with disability is increasing, and more efforts are being made toward providing community-based supports for this population, along with the deinstitutionalization we talked about. This is very true, to get them to be self-sustaining at the best level they can be, and also to understand that they have value and that they are very important. So that's our that's the voiceover for lecture for chapter 12. Have a great day. Thank you.